My first experience with jiu-jitsu, I believe I was 14 years old, getting ready to turn 15, and a friend of mine, Tom, that I trained karate with every day at the local karate school, he had been kicked out of karate class, and he said, you know, I'm not allowed back there, so I've been looking around and I found this place that is teaching this ground fighting class, something like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. And I said, oh, what's that? And he said, you got to check it out. It's every Wednesday night. So I said, okay, well, I'll forego karate class on Wednesday and I'll go with you. I'll have my dad take me. And I got dropped off and I went into this local martial arts school that had like this 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock class on a school night. And I went in and did this 2-hour class, and I learned this move called paint the floor at the time, a shoulder lock or Americana. And I got a little handout with some pictures of submission holds and a little history on jiu-jitsu. And I'll never forget it, man. It was like that Tuesday before that Wednesday class was the last time I ever trained karate, and I never stopped chasing jiu-jitsu since. So the guy that was teaching jiu-jitsu that night, a guy named Adam Miller, who actually is still with me today, one of my closest friends on the mat, he was a judo guy. He had been to a jiu-jitsu seminar and he'd learned some moves, and came back and he was teaching a class every Wednesday. So I went in there, I met him, and the second I took that class, my buddy and I were like, man, it's time to seek this out. And from then on, we just started pursuing jiu-jitsu any way we can. There was no jiu-jitsu whatsoever in our area. So after I started training jiu-jitsu, we were going every Wednesday, and then from Thursday till the following Tuesday, we would get allowed in my wrestling room at my high school every morning from 6 o'clock in the morning till 8 in the morning to go in and use the wrestling room and practice. The wrestling coach knew me from when I was a kid and taking wrestling camps and things like that, and Coach Patton was always good at letting us use the wrestling mat. So my friend Tom and I, we would just practice, and shortly after that, a few weeks after taking that Wednesday night class, we got a flyer for a local seminar outside of Chicago with a guy named Wellington Megaton Diaz. And we went to this Megaton seminar, and I'd never seen anything like it. All we did was bust our ass for 3 hours straight. I'd never trained so hard in my life, and I thought, this is the coolest guy in the world, man. He is so tough, and he's just a little guy, and I was a little young guy, and I got his information, and I think he didn't really realize how serious my friend Tom and I were. So we hopped on a plane, we went to Arizona, and from that day forward, from that first trip, when we went out to Phoenix, my mom called me into school, or my girlfriend's mom, something like that, and I got out of school for a week. We went to Arizona, and we just started training. We trained our butts off. But unfortunately, I was just a kid. You know, I was turning 15, 16 years old, and I was about 1.5 years into traveling, maybe 2 years into traveling out to Phoenix. I'd probably been to Arizona close to 20 times throughout my sophomore, junior year, and actually junior and senior year. I was traveling so much, and I was looking around for a local place to train because there just was nothing. But anyhow, I didn't know how the politics worked, and when I'd mentioned that I was going to train at a local jiu-jitsu school that was opening up in Chicago, Megaton got a little upset. He was a little territorial with me, which nowadays I understand a lot more than I did when I was just a kid and had no guidance. So I had a little bit of a split from him, and I started training jiu-jitsu in Chicago at the Carlson Gracie team. Once I started training jiu-jitsu at the Carlson Gracie team, it was great, but it was a 2-hour drive in traffic. I would lay carpet all day long. I come from a blue-collar, hard-working family business, and I would be working after school. I would be working weekends, summers, anything that came up, I'd be working to make money. And I would drive to the city, and I was driving a 1979 Chevy van full of carpet tools. The thing would overheat every 20 minutes. I'd have to pull over. I would go through gallons and gallons of water, and this was every day. So I just graduated high school. I was really serious about jiu-jitsu. I knew that this is what I wanted to do, and I took advice of one of my good friends, to attend a Frank Cucci seminar, which was a Thai boxing seminar in Chicago. And when I went and done that, he told me, Frank Cucci said, man, you got to come out to Virginia Beach next week or in a couple weeks and meet this guy Pedro Sauer. That's who I train under. And when he said that, I was like, Pedro who? All I could compare to is Megaton, and who was way up here to me. Like, he was just a god to me, even though I wasn't training with him still. And Carlson Gracie Jr., I was just like, man, these guys, how can anybody compare? And they're just all such amazing instructors and amazing people in what they do. And so I took this trip out to Virginia Beach, and I spent 2 weeks with my other friend, and we got to train with Pedro Sauer for almost 10 days, I think. He was doing a long seminar, a long camp, and I remember saying, hey, I want to do a private lesson with Pedro Sauer. Paid like $100, you know, at the time it was about $100 for a lesson. I paid $100, I went out there, and I'm thinking, okay, I just need to train with this guy. I gotta kick his ass, I'm gonna show him what's up. I've been everywhere, you know, I've been training with this guy and that guy, and you know, I've been competing and all that. And he says, okay, if we want to train, we can train, you know. And he put me inside his guard, and he put his hand on my collar. He reached deep, and he held me. He's just like, okay, little Jeff, what are you gonna do? And I was like, I'm fighting his hand off. I'm trying to break his grip. I'm trying to open his legs. I'm trying to fight back, and he's just going, come on, little Jeff, show me what you're gonna do. How are you gonna escape this? And as he's talking to me, he like puts his other hand on my neck, and then he starts to squeeze, and I tap out. I was like, okay, let's try again. He's just like, okay, one hand on my neck. It was literally about a 2 or 3 minute lesson that completely reshaped my thinking towards jiu-jitsu and my philosophy towards how I wanted to train and what I wanted to learn. So that was my first experience ever meeting Pedro Sauer, and I'll never forget it. Changed my life. When I met Pedro, I was 18 years old. I just turned 18 years old, and actually, it was such weird timing because in January of 1996, my dad passed away, and it was January 3rd, 1996. I was 18 years old, and I was just devastated. I mean, there was nothing worse that could happen to a kid like when you lose your dad. You know, my dad was sick for years, and I was one of his main caretakers, and I lived with him, and he was a big inspiration to me and a big mentor to me. Everything my dad did, I wanted to do, even though he didn't want me to do it. He didn't want me laying carpet. He didn't want me living in the small town that we lived in. He wanted bigger things for me, and wanted me to go to college, and I said, no way, man, I want to be like you. You know, you're my idol. So when I lost him, it killed me. You know, it killed my when I lost my dad, it killed me. It killed my brother. We were everyone in my family and my mom, we were all so taken back by it. But I had already been involved in jiu-jitsu for a few years at that point. So I met Pedro Sauer. He was his exact same age as my dad. I told him my story a little bit, and Pedro brought me in, and he made me one of his own, and he became my inspiration. He became my mentor. He became everything that a kid in my situation needed, because the small town that I was from, Wonder Lake, Illinois, the small town where I lived my whole life, if you don't have something positive driving you, something to set goals for yourself, the chances of you making it out of that town without just being another one of the guys on a bar stool or another person struggling for money were very thin, very slim. So, meeting Pedro, training under Pedro Sauer, it meant the world to me. I mean, it was like I want to make my dad proud. My dad up in heaven, my father on the mat. You know, it was like just finally somebody that I can go out there and show what I do and be respected for it. And I'll never forget the very first time I saw the UFC on TV, UFC 1, when Royce Gracie fought, and he was walking out to the cage and he had this look in his eyes and he had this train of people behind him, and I had no idea what was about to happen. All I remember was seeing him wearing this gi, and I thought, hey, that guy's wearing a gi like me. That guy does what I do. And then as I watched the promo video and I started learning about where the Gracie family came from, and I started tying it all together right then, and I started thinking, man, I do what he does. This is not mine to own. This is not mine to claim. I did this. There was a whole new world out there that I didn't even know. So I met Pedro Sauer and I started training with him, and all I could do is think, I want to be like Royce Gracie. I want to walk to the ring, I want to walk to the cage, and I want to fight to bring back honor and respect to the Gracie name and to Pedro Sauer. And I want to represent Jiu-Jitsu in the most purest environment possible. It means the world to me to represent Pedro.